Story 1. So this happened to me last month, and I still get freaked out thinking about it. I was house sitting for my aunt while she was on vacation. Her house is pretty big, but it's in a quiet suburban neighborhood, so I figured it'd be an easy gig, just feed the cat, water the plants, and chill out for a few days. The first night was fine. I watched some TV, had a glass of wine, and went to bed early. But the second night is when things got weird. I was laying in bed around midnight when I started hearing this faint noise. It was soft at first, like a low hum, but then it started sounding more like whispering. I thought maybe it was the wind or the pipes creaking, but then I realized it was coming from the air vents. At this point, I'm sitting up in bed, heart racing, because it seriously sounded like someone was whispering just below the floor. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, but then I heard something that made my skin crawl, a voice, faint but clear, coming through the vent right above my bed. It said, "Come downstairs." I froze. I thought maybe it was a prank, but I was alone. My aunt doesn't have neighbors close enough for voices to carry through the walls. I tried to rationalize it, thinking it could be an old house noise, but my gut was screaming that something was wrong. I grabbed my phone and texted my friend, telling her what I heard. She joked, saying it was probably the cat messing with me, but the cat was fast asleep in the living room. Then I heard it again, louder this time. "Come downstairs." I grabbed a flashlight and tiptoed toward the stairs, convinced I was about to find someone had broken in. The whole house felt off, like the air was too still. As I reached the top of the stairs, I shined my flashlight down into the darkness. The voice came again, clearer now, like it was right next to me. "Come down. I need you." I noped out. I ran back to the bedroom, locked the door, and stayed up all night with the lights on, trying to figure out if I was losing my mind. The next morning, I called my aunt to ask if the house had any weird issues with the vents. She went quiet for a second, then said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. A few years ago, we had some trouble with the wiring, and the electricians swore they heard voices in the walls. They thought it was picking up a radio signal or something, but I've never heard it myself." I didn't stay the last night. I left that afternoon, and I haven't been back since. Story 2. Last weekend, I had the house to myself. My parents were out of town for a couple of days, and I was looking forward to a quiet weekend of binge-watching movies and doing nothing. The first night went smoothly, ordered some takeout, watched Netflix, and went to bed around midnight. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to this soft tapping sound. At first, I thought it was the wind or maybe some branches hitting the side of the house. But as I lay there, I realized it was too rhythmic, too consistent. It wasn't coming from outside, it was coming from the window in my room. I was still groggy, so I tried to ignore it, thinking I was imagining things. But the tapping kept getting louder, like someone was deliberately knocking. I turned over and faced the window, half expecting to see a tree branch or something. But the second I looked, I froze. There was a man standing outside my window, just standing there, staring at me through the glass. He was tall with long dark hair, and he had this unsettling smile on his face, like he knew something I didn't. My room is on the second floor, so there's no way he should have been able to reach the window. But there he was, tapping on the glass with one long finger. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. We just stared at each other for what felt like forever. Then he stopped tapping and started mouthing words, slowly and deliberately. It took me a few seconds to realize what he was saying. "Let me in." I snapped out of my paralysis and grabbed my phone, trying to dial 911. But before I could even unlock it, the tapping stopped. I looked up, and he was gone. Just like that. There was no sound, no footsteps, no nothing. I rushed to the window and looked outside, but there was no one there. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the hallway with all the lights on, phone in hand, just waiting. I told myself it had to be a dream, But the next morning, when I finally worked up the nerve to go back to the window, I saw it handprints. Clear as day. 2 pale, smudged handprints on the glass. My parents came home the next day, and I didn't tell them anything. But every night since, I've slept with my blinds tightly shut, because I have no idea how that man got to my second-floor window. And I don't want to find out. Story 3. This happened to me a few months ago, and I still get chills just thinking about it. My parents were out of town for the weekend, and I was left alone to watch the house. We live in a pretty quiet neighborhood, so I wasn't too worried about being by myself. The first night was peaceful. I ordered pizza, played some video games, and went to bed around midnight. Everything seemed normal until the second night. I was in the living room watching TV when I started hearing strange noises coming from above me. Our house has an attic, but it's basically a storage space. No one goes up there except my dad, and only to get out the Christmas decorations. At first I figured it was just the house settling or maybe an animal got in somehow, but the more I listened, the more it sounded like something was moving. It wasn't just random creaks or bumps, it was footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps like someone was pacing back and forth. I paused the TV and listened closely. The footsteps stopped for a second, and then I heard a soft thud, like something had been dropped or knocked over. That's when my heart started racing. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, but the sound was too clear, too specific. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't a squirrel. I grabbed my phone and called my parents, trying to stay calm. My dad told me to relax, saying it was probably just the house shifting, and that I was just freaked out from being alone. But the moment I hung up, I heard it again this time, louder. Something was dragging across the attic floor. I grabbed a kitchen knife and stood in the middle of the living room, staring up at the ceiling. The dragging stopped. Silence. Then, after what felt like forever, I heard the sound of something scratching at the attic door, which was in the hallway ceiling near my bedroom. The slow, scraping noise sent chills down my spine. I decided I had to check it out. I climbed the stairs slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last. The attic door was closed, but I could see dust falling from the edges, like something was moving around up there. I grabbed the attic pull string, hesitated for a second, and yanked it. The ladder creaked open, and I waited, expecting to hear more movement. Nothing. Just dead silence. I shone my phone's flashlight up into the attic. The beam cut through the darkness, but I didn't see anything at first. The boxes were all there, untouched, and everything seemed fine. I was about to close it back up when I noticed something in a corner of the attic, where the light didn't quite reach, had a pile of something that looked out of place. It wasn't there the last time I'd been up there. I climbed up the ladder, heart pounding, and shined my light directly on the pile. It was a heap of old clothes. But the creepy part? They weren't ours. They were dirty, torn, and looked like they had been there for years. Mixed in with the clothes were old cans of food, wrappers, and a small, tattered blanket. It looked like someone had been living up there. I felt a wave of nausea as I realized what I was looking at. I scrambled back down the ladder and slammed the attic door shut, locking it in place. I didn't even think. I just grabbed my keys, ran out of the house, and drove to my friend's place down the street. I spent the night there, not saying a word to my parents until they got home. When I told them what I found, my dad immediately went up to the attic to check it out. But when he came down, he had this weird look on his face. He said the clothes and trash were gone. There was no sign that anyone had been up there. I know what I saw, though. I wasn't imagining it. We changed the locks and installed a security system after that, but I still get creeped out every time I hear a noise from the attic. I don't know who or what was up there, but I'm never staying home alone again. Story 4. This happened a couple of years ago, when I was still living at my parents' house. They had gone out of town for the weekend, and I was excited to have the house to myself. It was supposed to be a chill weekend, just me, some pizza, and Netflix. The first night was fine, nothing weird, but the second night was when things got disturbing. It was around 3 a.m. when I woke up to the sound of knocking. Not on my bedroom door, but from the front door downstairs. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I remember lying there, heart racing, trying to convince myself it was just a dream or some late-night delivery gone wrong. But then, it happened again, 3 more knocks. Not louder, not softer, just persistent. I sat up in bed, trying to listen more closely. Silence. I thought maybe it was just someone messing with me, but no one I knew would come to my house at 3 in the morning, especially unannounced. I got out of bed and grabbed my phone, heading downstairs quietly. Every part of me was screaming not to answer the door, but curiosity got the better of me. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I stopped in front of the door and waited. There was a small window at the top of the door that I could barely reach, so I tiptoed and peeked through. No one was there. I felt a wave of relief, thinking maybe the knocking had been my imagination. But as I turned to go back upstairs, I heard it again. 3 knocks. This time it wasn't at the front door. It was at the back door, which led to our yard. I froze. The back door was only a few steps away from where I stood. My hand was trembling as I slowly turned the lock, opening the door just a crack to look outside. No one. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and ran upstairs to my room, locking that door too. I figured if someone was outside messing with me, I'd just call the police. But the knocking stopped as suddenly as it had started. I stayed awake for hours, waiting for another sound, but it never came. The next morning, I decided to check the cameras we had set up around the house. My stomach dropped when I saw the footage. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the camera at the front door caught a figure standing outside. They were tall, wearing all black, and they just stood there for a few seconds before knocking on the door. But here's the freaky part. After knocking, they didn't walk away. They didn't move at all. They just disappeared. 1 second they were there, and the next, the footage showed nothing. I didn't stay in the house for the rest of the weekend. I packed a bag and left for a friend's place, and I didn't go back until my parents came home. I never found out who or what it was,